everybody. Long time no here. I am so sorry about that. Life has been busy here. As you can see, my little Amish paste tomatoes have outgrown their bounds here. And you can see I've been repotting. So I thought that this would be a good opportunity to show you how to repot or transplant, whatever you want to call it. I'm transplanting these from a smaller container into these 5-inch peat pots. And then I'll hold them there until it's time for them to go to the garden. So I'm going to show you how we do that. Forgive the camera angle. This is about the best I can do. I know it's kind of dark, but it is what it is. We have to adapt and overcome. So I am using some Miracle-Gro potting soil, just some simple potting soil. I'm just putting a little bit in the bottom of the pot, like a little bit. And I'll tell you why. I'm going to pop out. Here, let me show you this, how you get a seedling safely. Ooh, look at that angle. I don't know if you can see this, but I wanted to kind of show you how you safely get a seedling out of the pot. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. I don't even know. First thing you want to do is push on the bottom and kind of push it up a little bit. And then gently pick these up by their little stems. Tomatoes in particular are very resilient. And then I had sown 2 seeds per hole. And I know it's going to make a mess, and it's just par for the course. So gently, when I say gently, I mean gently, pull them apart and be careful when you're separating the roots that you don't tear. You're not in a hurry here. The great thing about tomatoes is they're extremely resilient, and they grow roots all the way up the stem. So you can see this one's kind of tall. It's a little bit leggy is what it's called when they're like super stretchy like this. It had plenty of adequate light, but the fact of the matter is I've just had them in these little pots too long. I'm removing these. These are called the first true leaves. And the reason I'm removing these, you can see they're just those first leaves that show up. The reason I'm removing these is because when I plant this, I'm going to cover up most of the stems so that this gets a very strong root system. So that's why I barely put any soil into the bottom of my pot. So I'm simply setting my tomato in the pot. See how I've got it there? And then I'm going to bring up the camera. Thank goodness for editing, am I right? Now I'm going to attempt to do this one-handed. We're going to see how this goes. I really don't know. But pretty much what you do is you just gently support the stem and you start filling in soil around it, making the stem go where you want it to go. And then gently pressing down around the stem. And don't worry, I know it looks bad now, but I promise it'll right itself here. Then you're just going to fill it in. You can take this as deep as you can. This pot isn't deep enough to take it all the way up, but I could technically take it up a little bit farther. You don't want to go any farther than here. You see, sorry about that. I don't know if you can see, excuse me, maybe this is a better angle. See this? This middle part here is where the plant will keep perpetuating. Like that'll just keep going up and up and up. So you don't want to bury that. You run the risk of rot, and you don't want that. Tomatoes are my favorite to transplant because they are just so forgiving and resilient. You can do a lot to them. You can bring them to death's door and they will do good. Now, why I'm doing this, I'm firming the soil around the stem. And the reason that you do this is if you don't, you can get air pockets in the soil, and air pockets means dry roots. Dry roots mean dead plant. So you want to firm it in. I mean, you don't want to get a freaking soil tamper, but you want to push it in pretty decent. And then you always water in your seedlings for the same reason. You want to settle those air bubbles out. And also it needs moisture. So when I transplant, the first thing I do is I pour water onto my soil. See how it clumps together? It's not dripping, but it clumps together. And the reason is, whether you're starting a seed or you're transplanting a seedling, you want to start with moist soil, or you're going to have a very hard time moistening your soil later when it is time to water these in, whether you're watering in seeds or transplants. And then, of course, I am really bad about not marking them, and then I don't know what I have until they fruit. This time I am making a very concerted effort to save, so I know that this is Amish paste, and I only have this many more to go. But that's very basic how you transplant a tomato. Most plants are pretty similar, some are more delicate. I'll bring you along when I do some of my pepper plants. You can see they're really coming along there, and then pretty soon my brassicas, my broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage are going to need to be transplanted. And then I just started some herb seeds in these berry containers, and I've got some onions going, and I've got some more tomatoes and such going over there. So I wanted to show you, this is what those tomatoes that I transplanted the other day look like. I think I might need an intervention because this is not all the tomatoes I have. You can see these ones are getting a little bit tall, and that's okay. Remember I talked about legginess in tomatoes? It's not the end of the world, because when I put them in the ground, I will bury them up to this first set of true leaves, and we will have no issues. I did that last year with some clearance tomatoes I got. I just laid down the stems. There was about a foot of bare stem. I laid them down and buried them, and they did great. So when it's time to plant these out, of course, I'll show you the process. And then today I'm also going to do some pepper transplanting, so I'll bring you along for that as well. But this is one of two. We only have two south-facing windows in this whole house. There's these and in our bedroom, and obviously I can't do our bedroom because our bed is there. So space is at a premium here. Over here you can see that I have some marjoram seedlings going, and back there, you don't know if you can see that, there's some Mexican tarragon and a bucket outside somebody forgot. But you can see these really have come along beautifully, and they will continue to grow and get big and beautiful. So when it's time for them to go outside, we'll get some fruit right away. If any of these flower, I will pinch off the flower buds, because when we transplant them, we want them to put all the energy into making a strong root system before they fruit. Now I'm moving on to potting up pepper plants, and I'm going to treat these much like the tomatoes, with the exception of I'm not looking to bury their stems like I would a tomato. They don't have the same properties of putting roots down along their stem. Here I'm just popping them out, and I'm being very careful. I really want to be careful with the root ball on these. With tomatoes, you can be a little bit more aggressive, but you can see here that the roots are very well developed. They haven't gone completely around. This is a good point when you have your first 2 to 3 sets of true leaves, which are leaves beyond those very first leaves on the bottom. So I'm just pulling them out and making sure I have a good intact root system, and I'm popping a hole into my pot and putting it in there. These particular peppers are California Wonder bell peppers. I want to have a bunch this year. Last year, one of my goats got to a bunch of my pepper starts and ate them down, and I was just so cross because I was sure everything was over with. But it's funny, those things bounced back, and I ended up with a lot of bell peppers. So I'm looking forward to having them again this year. I'm not sure I'll let the goats prune them for me, but anyway, just simply putting those into the pot. Again, I have that moistened soil. You don't want to do this into dry soil because it's near impossible to get it adequately wet. So you definitely want to take the time to get water in there and make it nice and moist. And then again, you'll water those in once you get them transplanted. Look at those beautiful roots. Oh my goodness, so pretty. And then, yeah, you can just see those true leaves there, pointing out the 2 sets of true leaves. When a plant gets what's called root bound, where you start to see the roots go around the pot, that's the point where you can sometimes have to cut those roots just to help new ones be encouraged to grow. So the goal is to try and transplant before you get in that root bound situation. And see how I don't have it as deep, and I want to make sure that make sure those leaves don't touch the soil. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.